Hello everybody, hi everyone. My name is Muliemo Moinwa and I am joined by Kimani Njogu. Thank you! The illustrious Kimani Njogu, who is a former professor at Kenyatta University, a linguist, and now the director of Toreza Communications, who run a journal called Jahazi. And I am an artist, but also a researcher. I am the director of an organization called Andani Africa, which is a creative industries insights agency. And we do research into creative industries specifically because we think creativity is the future of Africa. And today we're going to be talking about our cultural heritage, and particularly about a topic, a very important topic, restitution. And both of us have received support, thank you to Africa No Filter, to do more work and thinking around this topic. So to start off, I'd just like to get a feel for the room. Between 90 and 95% of sub-Saharan Africa's heritage is not in Africa. If you think that's wrong, put up one hand. Between 90 and 95% of Africa's heritage, material heritage, masks, etc., is not in Africa. It's outside of Africa. If you think that's wrong, put up one hand. Okay, a few more. For those of you who think it's wrong or not, of the African heritage that we have, the material heritage, fabrics, masks, sculptures, artworks of various kinds, how many of you think that this history informs the storytelling we need to tell about ourselves? Okay, a few more. Good to know where we stand. Good to know where we stand. Ms. Njogu, we have both kind of done quite a lot of work around this.
Kimani.
Okay, I stick to it. Kimani, we've both done quite a lot of work around restitution. And restitution has really shifted quite a lot in the sort of discourse across the world. One of the images that I think many of us are familiar with is in the first Black Panther, when they're in the museum, and now I forget his name. Somebody help me. Thank you. Killmonger is in the museum and he's speaking to the museum professional, no? And they smash the glass and they take the mask and the other objects from the museum. But even across the world, people are talking about restitution a lot more. So the work that we've done, we found that since 1990, academic discourse on restitution has grown by 500%. So people are talking about restitution more than they were in 1990 by 500%. And on social media, people are talking about restitution just since 2016, the increase is 600%. Of that 500% increase, that 600% increase, how many of you think, what would you say that is an increase of Africans being quoted and written about? So if we think of the graph in your direction this way, right? 500%, 600%. What's the percentage you think is Africans involved in that 500%, 600%? 300? 200? Or 2? Somebody knows. 2%, right? Actually, the increase in terms of Africans being listened to, Africans being quoted, Africans being interviewed in the press, no growth, 0. That 600% is not Africans talking about African heritage restitution. Right? Ms. Njogu, you've been really involved in trying to create more knowledge from an African perspective for Africans. And recently, Jahazi released a journal, an edition of the journal that was on restitution. Can you tell us a little bit more about that work?
Yeah, thank you very much. Really, and thank you, Africa No Filter, for the good work. You made it possible for us to release this special issue of Jahazi. When we started Jahazi, the late Bantu Maura, an amazing, actor, writer, and so on, we wanted to create a space for engagement on arts, culture, and performance. And we got the first grant from the Ford Foundation to do that. And then Lambent, Foundation came on board through Michelle, Kofi, and others to support going forward. Now, with regard to this particular issue, I read the report from Africa No Filter that we were not getting enough stories, positive stories from Africa about Africa. And I was like, oh, we have this platform and we have an opportunity to shift one particular narrative about Africans not valuing that which belongs to them. Because there was a narrative going on in the West that why should we return Africa's heritage when they do not value that which belongs to them? And I was really shocked by that. So we went ahead, we applied for the grant, and we now decided to take a Pan-African approach. We believe that the way to deal with restitution is to take a Pan-African approach and to work with journalists and practitioners. So we commissioned articles from Mozambique, from Ethiopia, Nigeria, Sudan, across Africa, and really worked with media practitioners to pull out stories about their heritage and why we need not just our icons who are located in the West, but also those particular mediums that belong to us. So that was how we ended up releasing Volume 10, Issue 1 of Jahazi. Pan-African approach, focused on a range of issues, driven, and with regard to researchers, we were very particular on getting stories from younger researchers because we thought that the way we shift the narrative is to focus on younger people who are able to do research and pull it out so that we can consume. And of course, published through Creative Commons, and that allowed us to be able to reach the globe. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And from these different articles and writers that you got from across the continent, can you tell us a little bit, what are some of the themes that you're seeing coming out around what is the really important conversation that's happening around our cultural heritage?
Yeah, I think that one of the themes that, and I'll share a couple, is really the imperative of taking a Pan-African approach in this whole question and to be able to work across, across the continent as well as the African diaspora. I think that was very, very important. But there is another very important theme, which is policy, the policy framework, that we do require a coherent policy framework within our various countries to be able to deal with restitution. So in the case of Kenya, we have not ratified the 1970 UNESCO Convention, we have not ratified the Unidroit Convention, 1995. There are many things. We have not even ratified the African Union Culture Charter, and so forth and so on. And therefore there is need to do that. And so there is the policy framework that needs to be worked on. The other area relates to community involvement. There is no way we are going to be able to succeed in the restitution agenda without working directly with the communities that are the claimants of restitution. There is also the issue of research, development of inventories, and so on. Very, very critical. And I think finally, the issue of intergenerational conversation. Because again, our assets, our heritage has been located for quite a while in the global north, and younger people may not have access to that knowledge. And therefore, how can we accelerate knowledge sharing and extraction of that knowledge across generations? So that's important, and that is another theme that has come out.
Absolutely. Some of what we've seen in the work that we do at a project called Open Restitution Africa, which my company Andani Africa does actually in collaboration with a Kenyan organization, African Digital Heritage, led by Chayana Haina.
Yes. Our friend.
Yes, our friend Chai. In the work we've done, we found that there are a lot of community activists leading the charge for return of our African cultural heritage, and not just our material heritage, but also human beings. So there are actually a lot of African human beings, in fact, human beings from all over the world, in museums in the global north, in Europe and America. and communities are sort of leading the charge to have these returns happen, and really shifting and pressurizing our states to then make changes happen. But as you say, if the policies aren't in place, they face significant challenges. So, for example, we've had cases in many parts of the continent where activists pressurize Europeans who finally agree to return something, and then when it's on its way back, we find out that when it arrives in Africa, we have to pay customs.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it happened in Kenya. I mean, we worked very hard to bring stuff, get to the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, and KRA is right there asking communities to pay tax for the return of our stuff. I mean, really.
And that's where you see policy actually has very practical implications and very real kind of impacts for communities as well. But I think what's important to recognize is that people are leading the charge, and change certainly is happening. And the reason there's that 600% change is because Africans have been pushing, right? And we've never stopped pushing to make sure that our heritage is returned to us, particularly because people really want to be able to work from that heritage to imagine a new future for Africa as well.
Absolutely, and there is also a misconception here that this debate started recently in Africa. Actually, it started from the moment our heritage was taken away. I mean, from those earlier days, our people started making claims to our heritage. So it's not a recent phenomenon. It's not a recent discourse. It's always been with us right from the beginning, from the slave trade period, from slavery all the way to the present. Our people have always claimed that which belongs to us.
Absolutely, and one of the periods in which it gets a very big conversation, I think, is soon after independence. Many sort of early presidents start demanding to have things back because African countries are independent, and it's part of our culture, it's part of who we are. And because they were faced with a lot of resistance from the global north, from Europe, from America, they didn't continue. But what we've seen is that it's artists in particular who continued that conversation and continued to make films, continued to make fashion, continued to make artworks that spoke to what's being taken from us and what we need back.
And that's why we must always invest in the creative sector. That's why we must put in resources for the creative sector. Our creatives must be able to tell our story. We would like to see restitution in film. We'd like to see restitution in TikTok. We would like to see restitution debates across the board, because our heritage is our site of innovation, of creativity, of reactivation of our imagination, and re-energization, really, of who we are. It helps us build confidence in terms of engaging the world and so on. So I think it's very, very important. The creative sector, artists are core. They are at the center of this whole issue. And I think that even when the politicians are hesitant, the creative sector shows the way, and the political class would actually follow.
Absolutely, and I think we've even seen that today. When we were watching those short clips of animations, a number of them, you could see the references being made to African traditional clothing, African traditional craft and creativity. Zuzukwa includes masks and other kind of cultural heritage. And so you really see that our heritage is not just about the past, it's really about the future.
Absolutely, and you think about this, just imagine for a moment that if we brought all our people back, because our people, I mean, some of us believe that even Dedan Kimathi is located somewhere in Britain. We believe that, we think that, because that's why we can't locate his resting place in Kenya. Just imagine all our people back. Just imagine all our creativity back, and what that would actually do to the imagination of the creative sector in Africa. I mean, we would create, now we are creating, but we'd actually create even more with all the resources and all our people back here.
You can see that we could talk about this topic for a long time. We get really excited. But if you want to know more about restitution, about this heritage, and about the history of what's happened, but also about what really amazing people like you, Kimani, are doing across the continent, you can look for Jahazi Journal, Volume 10, Issue 1, which is online and free and accessible. But you can also go to Open Restitution Africa. We have a full list of Africans that you can reference, quote, retweet. Think about who are the people that we're trying to put out there. Who are the people whose names we're really pushing forward? Are we contributing to that 600% not being Africans? Or are we doing the opposite? We also have just put out a explainer video series aimed at young people. It's called Restitution 101. Short, punchy videos that give you a background, give you a history, share as much as you can.
And www.jahazi.co.ke. We launched actually the most recent one last week on perspectives of theatre in Kenya. And you can download all the Jahazis, they're out there at Creative Commons, and have fun.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.